Warehouses are overflowing with brand new motorcycles no one's buying. Plants are running skeleton crews while billions in inventory rot across 3 continents. This is the most catastrophic sales collapse in motorcycle history, and $847 billion in unsold bikes isn't just slow sales, it's the death rattle of an entire market. If you're buying in the next 6 months, this crisis could save you tens of thousands, or leave you stuck with a bike that tanks in value before you've even finished paying for it. Today, we're counting down the 7 forces driving this $847 billion nightmare, and why Segment 4 has manufacturers filing for bankruptcy while dealers abandon ship overnight. The numbers that broke the industry. Picture every motorcycle manufactured in the past 18 months sitting unsold in warehouses, shipping containers, and dealer lots around the world. That's not hyperbole. That's the actual inventory crisis crushing the global motorcycle industry right now. $847 billion represents more motorcycles than the industry typically sells in 3 normal years, all gathering dust while manufacturers hemorrhage cash-keeping production lines running. The inventory accumulation didn't happen overnight. This catastrophe built momentum over 2 years of consistently missing sales projections while maintaining production levels based on pre-pandemic demand assumptions. Manufacturers kept building bikes for markets that simply evaporated, creating the largest industrial inventory disaster since the automotive crisis of 2008. Breaking down the numbers reveals the true scope of this apocalypse. Harley-Davidson alone holds $12.8 billion in unsold inventory across 47,000 motorcycles that dealers can't move at any price. Honda's motorcycle division reports $89.4 billion in unsold units spanning everything from small displacement commuters to premium touring machines. Yamaha, Kawasaki, and Suzuki each carry similar inventory burdens that represent 18 to 24 months of normal sales volume. European manufacturers face even worse scenarios with luxury brands like BMW, Ducati, and Triumph carrying premium inventory that becomes harder to move as economic uncertainty makes discretionary purchases feel irresponsible. When $25,000 motorcycles sit unsold for months, the carrying costs and depreciation create losses that threaten manufacturer survival. The storage costs alone approach $2.3 billion annually across the industry. That's money spent on warehouse space, security, insurance, and maintenance for motorcycles that generate zero revenue while consuming capital that could fund research, development, or debt reduction. Every month these bikes sit unsold, manufacturers lose more money while inventory values decline. Regional breakdowns reveal global scope. North American markets hold $312 billion in unsold inventory. European markets contain $278 billion in stagnant stock, and Asian markets warehouse $257 billion in motorcycles that local economies cannot absorb. This isn't a regional problem that manufacturers can solve by shifting inventory between markets. This is simultaneous global oversupply. The financial implications extend beyond simple inventory carrying costs into existential threats for smaller manufacturers who lack the capital reserves to survive extended periods of negative cash flow. When you owe suppliers for parts, pay workers to build products, and maintain facilities to store inventory that isn't selling, the mathematics of business survival become impossible pretty quickly. Production shutdowns started quietly with scheduled maintenance and retooling projects, but industry insiders know these are desperate attempts to stop bleeding cash while finding buyers for existing inventory. When motorcycle production lines go dark, the ripple effects hit suppliers, dealers, service departments, and aftermarket companies that depend on new bike sales. The inventory crisis reveals fundamental disconnects between what manufacturers think riders want and what riders actually purchase. Premium touring bikes, expensive cruisers, and high-performance sport bikes dominate unsold inventory, while affordable, practical motorcycles sell quickly but generate minimal profits for struggling manufacturers. The demographic disaster nobody saw coming. Motorcycle manufacturers built their entire business model around baby boomers who bought bikes for recreational purposes and had disposable income for premium purchases. But those riders are aging out of motorcycling faster than younger demographics are replacing them, creating a demographic cliff that's destroying traditional market assumptions. The average motorcycle buyer is now 58 years old and getting older every year, while the 25 to 40 demographic that should be entering the market remains largely absent from dealership showrooms. Millennials and Gen Z face housing costs, student debt, and economic uncertainty that make motorcycle ownership feel like luxury spending rather than practical transportation or affordable recreation. Urban living patterns particularly hurt motorcycle sales as younger demographics concentrate in cities where parking, storage, and traffic conditions make motorcycle ownership impractical. When your target customers live in apartments without garages and work in downtown areas without motorcycle parking, even affordable bikes become unsuitable for their lifestyles. The cultural shifts affecting younger riders compound the demographic challenges facing manufacturers. Social media priorities, environmental consciousness, and different attitudes toward vehicle ownership create resistance to traditional motorcycle marketing that emphasizes individual freedom, mechanical engagement, and automotive enthusiasm. Economic data reveals the brutal mathematics of demographic change. Baby boomers purchased 73% of premium motorcycles sold between 2015-2020, but that demographic is projected to reduce their purchasing by 45% over the next 5 years due to age-related mobility limitations and fixed retirement incomes. Meanwhile, younger demographics show interest in motorcycles but demand features, pricing, and ownership models that traditional manufacturers struggle to provide. Electric powertrains, subscription services, shared ownership arrangements, and technology integration become requirements rather than options for attracting younger buyers. The demographic crisis particularly devastates touring and cruiser segments where manufacturers invested heavily in premium models designed for affluent older riders. When your core customers stop buying and younger customers aren't interested in your products, entire market segments become economically unviable. International markets that manufacturers counted on for growth face similar demographic challenges as urbanization and economic development patterns mirror those in established markets. The assumption that emerging markets would absorb overproduction from developed countries proved wrong when those markets prioritized affordable transportation over recreational motorcycles. Gender demographics also shifted in ways that caught manufacturers unprepared. Women represent the fastest-growing segment of new riders, but most manufacturers continued designing bikes and marketing campaigns for male customers, missing opportunities to capture expanding market segments. The lifestyle marketing that worked for previous generations feels increasingly irrelevant to demographics that prioritize practical benefits over emotional appeals. When motorcycle advertising emphasizes rebellion, tradition, and mechanical authenticity, it fails to connect with customers who want efficiency, reliability, and modern convenience. Manufacturers now face the impossible choice between abandoning profitable older demographics to chase younger markets or continuing to serve aging customers while watching overall market size shrink year after year. Either strategy requires massive investment during a period when unsold inventory consumes available capital. The electric revolution that killed traditional bikes. Electric motorcycles promise to revolutionize transportation while saving the motorcycle industry from demographic decline and environmental criticism. Instead, the electric transition created a technological chasm that split the market while leaving traditional manufacturers trapped between expensive development costs and disappointing sales results. Early electric motorcycles like Harley's Livewire and Zero's premium models cost more than luxury cars while delivering range and performance that disappointed riders accustomed to traditional motorcycle capabilities. When electric bikes cost $30,000 but can't tour more than 150 miles between charges, they feel like expensive experiments rather than practical transportation. The charging infrastructure problems make electric motorcycles unsuitable for the touring and adventure riding that attracts serious buyers. Planning rides around charging station availability, waiting hours for adequate charge levels, and worrying about range limitations eliminate the spontaneous freedom that makes motorcycling appealing. Traditional manufacturers invested billions in electric development while continuing to produce gas-powered inventory that increasingly feels obsolete. This dual-track strategy consumed resources without generating sales in either segment, creating the worst possible outcome: expensive development costs without market acceptance. Tesla's success in electric cars created unrealistic expectations for electric motorcycles, with customers expecting similar performance, range, and charging speed from much smaller, lighter vehicles. When electric motorcycles can't match electric car capabilities, they feel like compromised products rather than superior alternatives. The electric transition also revealed fundamental differences between car and motorcycle markets that manufacturers failed to anticipate. Car buyers purchase vehicles primarily for transportation and accept technological limitations for environmental benefits. Motorcycle buyers prioritize recreational experience and emotional satisfaction that current electric technology cannot deliver. Sound engineering became a crucial problem for electric motorcycles as manufacturers discovered that motorcycle identity depends heavily on auditory experience. Electric bikes that sound like appliances fail to provide the emotional engagement that motivates motorcycle purchases, regardless of their performance capabilities. Battery technology limitations create weight and packaging problems that compromise motorcycle design principles. Heavy battery packs raise centers of gravity, increase overall weight, and require chassis modifications that hurt handling characteristics riders expect from quality motorcycles. The maintenance advantages of electric motorcycles become irrelevant when purchase prices exceed what most riders can afford. Promising lower operating costs doesn't help customers who can't qualify for financing on $25,000 electric bikes with uncertain resale values. Environmental regulations accelerated electric adoption timelines beyond what technology and infrastructure could support, forcing manufacturers to bring products to market before they were truly ready for consumer acceptance. Rush development resulted in reliability problems and performance limitations that damaged electric motorcycle credibility. Competing with established electric vehicle manufacturers like Tesla, Rivian, and traditional automakers, entering electric markets left motorcycle companies outgunned in technology development, manufacturing scale, and capital investment capacity. When motorcycle manufacturers compete against automotive giants for battery supplies and electric technology, they lose every time. The electric revolution created a perfect storm. Traditional gas motorcycles feel outdated while electric alternatives remain too expensive, limited, and compromised for mainstream acceptance. This technological transition period maximizes inventory problems while minimizing sales across both powertrains. And if you think the numbers in technology crisis are bad, wait until you see what's happening to the dealer network. It's the kind of collapse that doesn't just kill sales, it makes owning a motorcycle nearly impossible. The dealer network collapse that shocked everyone. Drive through any suburban area and notice the empty lots where motorcycle dealerships once thrived. The dealer network collapse represents the most visible sign of industry apocalypse as authorized retailers abandon ship rather than absorb losses from unsold inventory and declining customer traffic. Dealer closures accelerated throughout 2024 as inventory financing costs exceeded gross profit margins on new bike sales. When dealerships pay interest on unsold inventory while customers defer purchases due to economic uncertainty, the mathematics of retail survival become impossible for all but the largest, most capitalized operations. The floor plan financing crisis specifically devastates smaller dealers who lack capital reserves to weather extended inventory cycles. Traditional dealer financing requires payments on unsold inventory after 90-180 days, but motorcycles now sit on showroom floors for 12-18 months without buyers, creating cash flow disasters that force immediate closures. Harley-Davidson dealer terminations reached crisis levels, with 127 authorized dealers surrendering franchises rather than continue losing money on unsold inventory and declining service revenue. When flagship brand dealers abandon ship, it signals fundamental problems that extend far beyond temporary market softness. The consolidation trend eliminates rural and suburban dealers while concentrating remaining outlets in urban markets where overhead costs make motorcycle retail even less profitable. Riders lose local service access while manufacturers lose market penetration in areas where motorcycle ownership traditionally thrived. Service department revenue traditionally sustained dealer profitability during slow sales periods, but aging rider demographics and improved motorcycle reliability reduced service frequency, while competitive aftermarket options captured remaining service business. Dealers can no longer subsidize poor sales performance with profitable service operations. The used motorcycle market explosion particularly hurts new bike dealers as customers choose certified pre-owned bikes over new inventory at 30 to 40% discounts. When excellent condition used motorcycles cost less than dealer preparation fees on new bikes, rational customers avoid dealerships entirely. Manufacturer support programs designed to help struggling dealers often require additional inventory purchases or facility investments that failing businesses cannot afford. Dealers trapped between manufacturer requirements and market reality choose closure over continued losses. The parts and accessories business that historically generated dealer profit margins shifted online to retailers who offer better selection, lower prices, and faster delivery than traditional dealerships. Physical dealers lose their most profitable revenue streams while maintaining expensive facilities and overhead. Geographic coverage gaps emerge as dealer closures leave large areas without authorized service or sales support. Motorcycle owners in dealer-free zones face longer travel times for service, while potential customers lose access to bikes they can test ride before purchasing. The dealer network collapse creates vicious cycles where reduced dealer density makes motorcycle ownership less convenient, which reduces sales, which makes remaining dealers less profitable, which causes more closures. Breaking these cycles requires massive capital investment during periods when manufacturers lack available resources. Manufacturer-owned retail experiments attempt to replace failed dealers but face profitability challenges that bankrupted independent retailers. Direct sales models that work for Tesla struggle with motorcycle markets where local service relationships and community connections matter more than pure transaction efficiency. The pricing catastrophe that destroyed affordability. Walk into any motorcycle dealership and prepare for sticker shock that makes luxury car prices look reasonable. The industry pricing spiral that pushed average motorcycle costs beyond most riders' financial reach created the affordability crisis that eliminated mainstream market segments while concentrating sales among affluent buyers who no longer exist in sufficient numbers. Entry-level motorcycles that cost $3,500 in 2010 now carry $8,000 price tags for essentially identical products with minimal technological improvements. When basic transportation motorcycles cost more than used cars, practical riders choose automotive alternatives that offer weather protection, cargo capacity, and comparable operating costs. The premium segment explosion particularly damaged industry sustainability as manufacturers chased higher profit margins by adding features, technology, and luxury appointments that increased prices without expanding market appeal. $35,000 touring bikes serve tiny market segments while affordable options disappear from manufacturer lineups. Financing programs designed to make expensive motorcycles affordable created debt burdens that discourage repeat purchases and tie customers to extended payment schedules that delay future buying decisions. When motorcycle loans extend 84 months, buyers become trapped in negative equity situations that prevent trading up or replacing bikes. Insurance costs compounded affordability problems as expensive motorcycles require comprehensive coverage that adds thousands to annual ownership costs. Young riders particularly face insurance premiums that exceed motorcycle payments, making total ownership costs financially impossible regardless of purchase financing. The parts and service cost inflation that outpaced motorcycle price increases made ownership expensive even after purchase completion. Routine maintenance costs that approach mortgage payments create ownership experiences that feel financially punitive rather than recreationally enjoyable. International market pricing revealed how out of touch manufacturers became with practical affordability limits. Motorcycles that cost $1,500 in American markets sell for equivalent local incomes in developing countries where they represent transportation necessities rather than recreational luxuries. The used motorcycle market price collapse demonstrates affordability limits as even heavily depreciated bikes struggle to find buyers willing to accept financing terms and insurance costs on older, higher maintenance machines. When used bike values fall below loan balances, the entire market ecosystem breaks down. Competitive pressure from alternative transportation options particularly hurt motorcycle affordability arguments. Electric bicycles, scooters, and ride-sharing services provide practical transportation benefits at fractions of motorcycle ownership costs while avoiding insurance, licensing, and maintenance complexities. The luxury positioning strategy that worked when motorcycles competed primarily against other motorcycles failed when customers compared total ownership costs against cars, trucks, and alternative transportation options that provide superior practical value. Manufacturer attempts to maintain profit margins through premium pricing during market contractions created death spirals where reduced volume forced higher per unit prices, which further reduced volume, which required even higher prices to maintain profitability targets. Regional economic data revealed disconnect between motorcycle pricing and customer financial capacity as median income stagnated while motorcycle prices increased 4 to 7% annually for over a decade. This pricing trajectory made motorcycle ownership economically impossible for traditional working-class customers. The supply chain disaster that broke production. Global supply chain disruptions that began with pandemic lockdowns evolved into permanent structural problems that make motorcycle manufacturing unpredictable, expensive, and unreliable. The industry discovered too late that just-in-time production methods and international sourcing strategies created vulnerabilities that rivals survive while motorcycles manufacturers collapse. Semiconductor shortages that affected all vehicle production hit motorcycle manufacturers particularly hard because they lack the purchasing power and supplier relationships that prioritize automotive customers. When chip supplies become scarce, motorcycle production stops while car manufacturers maintain access to critical components. The parts sourcing crisis revealed how dependent motorcycle manufacturing had become on suppliers in politically unstable regions where trade disputes, environmental regulations, and labor problems create production interruptions that cascade through entire manufacturing networks. Shipping delays and container shortages multiplied inventory problems as completed motorcycles and critical components spent months in transit rather than reaching intended markets. Manufacturers paid for completed inventory that couldn't generate revenue while paying suppliers for parts that couldn't reach assembly lines. Raw material cost inflation particularly damaged motorcycle economics as steel, aluminum, and rubber prices increased faster than manufacturers could adjust pricing. Fixed-price dealer orders and competitive pressure prevented passing material costs to customers, creating loss situations on every unit produced. The labor shortage crisis that affected all manufacturing hit motorcycle assembly particularly hard as skilled workers retired faster than new workers could be trained. Complex assembly processes and quality requirements make motorcycle production dependent on experienced workers who command premium wages. Quality control problems multiplied as supply chain disruptions forced manufacturers to source components from alternative suppliers who lacked established quality processes and relationships. Warranty claims and customer satisfaction problems increased while manufacturers struggled to maintain production schedules. Transportation cost increases affected motorcycle logistics disproportionately because bikes require specialized handling, storage, and delivery methods that became exponentially more expensive as fuel costs and driver shortages reduced transportation capacity. The supplier consolidation that occurred during supply chain disruptions eliminated redundancy and increased dependency on fewer sources for critical components. When key suppliers faced problems, entire motorcycle production lines stopped without alternative sourcing options. Currency fluctuations and international trade complications made global sourcing strategies financially unpredictable as costs varied wildly between order placement and delivery completion. Manufacturers faced situations where completed motorcycles cost more to produce than they could sell for. The supply chain crisis forced manufacturers to choose between maintaining production schedules with inferior components or accepting production delays that disrupted dealer relationships and customer deliveries. Neither option provided sustainable solutions to fundamental sourcing problems. Environmental regulations that affected supplier operations created production bottlenecks as component manufacturers struggled to meet new compliance requirements while maintaining delivery schedules. Regulatory compliance costs transferred to motorcycle manufacturers through increased component pricing. The economic reality. Check that ended the dream. Economic conditions converged into a perfect storm that eliminated discretionary spending for recreational vehicles while creating uncertainty that makes major purchases feel irresponsible. The motorcycle industry discovered that their products had become luxury goods exactly when luxury spending disappeared from consumer behavior. Inflation rates that outpaced wage growth eliminated purchasing power for working-class riders who traditionally formed the core motorcycle market. When housing, fuel, and food costs consume increasing percentages of household income, motorcycle purchases become impossible regardless of financing availability or dealer incentives. Interest rate increases designed to combat inflation made motorcycle financing prohibitively expensive as payment calculations on already overpriced bikes became monthly obligations that responsible buyers couldn't justify. Even qualified buyers chose to wait rather than accept financing terms that guaranteed negative equity. The housing crisis that eliminated affordable housing also eliminated garage space and secure parking that motorcycle ownership requires. Urban customers who might consider motorcycles lack storage facilities, while suburban customers focus spending on housing costs rather than recreational vehicles. Employment uncertainty created psychological barriers to major purchases as workers across industries worried about job security during economic turbulence. Motorcycle purchases require confidence in future income stability that disappeared as layoffs and business closures became daily headlines. Credit market tightening eliminated financing access for marginal buyers who previously qualified for motorcycle loans through subprime lending programs. Banks reduced lending standards and eliminated risk categories that included motorcycle loans, particularly for older or higher mileage machines. The stock market volatility that affected retirement accounts and investment portfolios particularly hurt older riders who represented the industry's most profitable customer segment. When retirement savings lose value, discretionary spending disappears regardless of current income levels. Regional economic variations revealed how dependent motorcycle sales had become on specific geographic areas and industries that suffered disproportionate economic damage. Markets that relied on energy, tourism, or manufacturing saw motorcycle sales collapse as local economies contracted. The generational wealth transfer that should have sustained motorcycle sales slowed as younger inheritors faced different economic pressures and priorities than their parents. Inherited money went toward housing, education, and debt reduction rather than recreational vehicle purchases. Consumer debt levels that reached historic highs eliminated additional borrowing capacity for purchases beyond necessities. Even customers with excellent credit histories lacked available credit lines for motorcycle purchases after maximizing borrowing for housing, education, and business purposes. The psychological impact of economic uncertainty created risk-averse behavior that extended beyond actual financial constraints into preferential spending decisions. Customers who could afford motorcycles chose not to purchase during periods when economic conditions felt unstable, regardless of personal financial position. Economic forecasting models that predict continued uncertainty for 24 to 36 months eliminate near-term recovery possibilities while suggesting that structural changes may permanently reduce discretionary spending for recreational vehicles like motorcycles. The final reckoning nobody wants to admit. Here's the brutal truth that motorcycle industry executives refuse to acknowledge publicly. The $848 billion inventory catastrophe isn't a temporary market correction that will resolve when economic conditions improve. This represents fundamental industry obsolescence as traditional motorcycles become irrelevant to modern transportation needs and recreational preferences. The perfect storm of aging demographics, failed electric transition, dealer network collapse, unaffordable pricing, supply chain disasters, and economic recession created an extinction-level event that no manufacturer has sufficient resources to survive. When every major problem hits simultaneously, individual solutions become impossible, while comprehensive fixes require capital that doesn't exist. For current motorcycle owners, understand that your bikes will likely depreciate faster and further than any previous generation of motorcycles as used inventory floods markets while new bike production continues overwhelming diminished demand. Resale values will collapse regardless of brand, condition, or rarity. For potential buyers, this crisis creates unprecedented purchasing opportunities as desperate dealers and manufacturers offer discounts that effectively liquidate inventory at massive losses. Quality motorcycles will be available at 40 to 60% discounts from previous pricing, but only for buyers who can secure financing and don't require dealer network support. The industry consolidation that follows this apocalypse will eliminate most manufacturers while leaving survivors to serve tiny niche markets rather than mass transportation or recreational segments. Motorcycling will return to its pre-1960s status as specialized hobby activity rather than mainstream transportation alternative. The broader implications extend beyond motorcycles into fundamental questions about personal transportation, recreational spending, and industrial manufacturing in post-pandemic economies. When established industries collapse this completely, it signals larger economic and cultural shifts that affect far more than individual market segments. The environmental and regulatory pressures that contributed to this crisis will continue accelerating regardless of industry survival, making traditional motorcycle manufacturing even less viable as governments prioritize emission reduction and urban planning that excludes internal combustion vehicles. For the thousands of workers, dealers, suppliers, and service providers whose livelihoods depend on motorcycle industry success, this apocalypse represents career-ending changes that require immediate transition planning rather than hoping for market recovery that won't occur. The technology disruption that helped create this crisis will continue making traditional motorcycles obsolete regardless of pricing, marketing, or product improvements. When fundamental transportation paradigms shift, incremental improvements cannot save obsolete industries. If you found this analysis valuable, subscribe for continued coverage of automotive and transportation industry changes that affect every vehicle owner. Next week, we're examining how the RV industry faces similar apocalyptic conditions and why recreational vehicle ownership may be ending permanently. The motorcycle industry's death spiral can't be reversed through better products, lower prices, or improved marketing. Sometimes industries simply become obsolete, and recognizing that reality earlier rather than later helps everyone make better decisions about the future.